A hush had settled over Winterfell, a stillness thick enough to smother the sounds of horses in the yard or ravens on the ramparts. It began when Bran Stark emerged from the God's Wood, one dawn draped in dew, as though the red leaves had wept on him. He stopped at the base of the ancient weirwood and laid a hand upon its carved face, and those who witnessed the touch swore the tree shuddered in recognition. Rumors sprinted faster than the direwolves once roaming these halls. Brandon Stark was not merely the boy lost to broken legs and tangled destinies. He was the living heart of the old gods, incarnate in brittle flesh. It started with the guards. Gray-clad men, accustomed to the staccato discipline of the watch, found their eyes drawn to Bran's stillness, as if gravity itself hung upon him. On their next rounds they bowed, awkward yet sincere, and whispered the first prayers. A younger sentry, Hareth, claimed Bran had looked at him, and that in the gaze he tasted every winter snowflake he had ever swallowed since childhood, and in the taste lay a promise of endless tomorrows. When Hareth failed to report to his post the following evening, they discovered him kneeling in the God's Wood, lips purple from reciting prayers, into the chill until voice deserted him. Sansa dismissed it as hero worship blown out of proportion by long hunger for wonder after wars and betrayals. Arya called it nonsense. She stalked corridors hoping for an enemy she could confront with needle, yet finding only scattered candles left unattended before doorways. But Jon, called king in the north, not long ago, and still the measure by which the bannermen judged themselves, watched the creeping devotion with a warrior's dread. He sensed what armies formed in silence before banners unfurled. Faith is a blade no armor can turn. By the fortnight's end 100 northern lords and smallfolk pressed into the great hall. They brought gifts of wool and bread, carved figurines of direwolves, clasping them in trembling hands as they approached Bran upon his carved weirwood throne. Sansa had placed him there during council to elevate her brother above the crowd for visibility. But the sight of him beneath antlered beams stained crimson by hearthlight conjured a portrait older than keeps and crowns, a god seated among mortals. When famine tightened its grip on the outlying villages, word reached Winterfell that Bran's name invoked bounty. Fishermen on the shivering sea knelt on slushy planks, mumbling pleas, and nets returned heavy with silver-bellied trout. A shepherd in the rill swore his ewe birthing triplets was no accident. He had wound a strip of direwolf fur around her horns and called upon the Stark god in Winterfell. Every new tale fanned the blaze. Sansa convened the household knights and the maester. She tried logic. Citing grain stores and healing salves distributed under her decree, but gratitude stuck to Bran's legend and not to her parchment signatures. When she confronted him privately, she found his calm unassailable. His eyes, pale pools reflecting countless lifetimes, drifted to a horizon she could not see. "You must tell them you're still just my brother," she urged, fingers gripping the carved armrest. "Remind them of the boy who loved acorn broth and bedtime tales of the winged knight." "I am that boy," Bran answered, voice tranquil as wind brushing snowdrifts. "Yet I am not only him." That answer feeds their mania. She stepped back, as if the weirwood milk smell surrounding him, resin and earth, threatened to drag her into its roots. "If they worship you, there will be no boundary they will not cross in your name." Bran's gaze drifted to a flickering candle. Boundaries are illusions. The river of time carves them and washes them away. In the courtyard below, Arya paced beneath the flanks of a monumental direwolf banner. She rehearsed arguments, sharpening them as she might a blade. War had taught her belief was weakness, and weakness killed. She intercepted a pilgrim caravan filing through the gate. Families from the Barrowlands, cheeks raw from wind, carrying woven snowflake tapestries. Arya barred their path. "Go home," she ordered. But the eldest woman only pressed a frostbitten palm to Arya's shoulder, muttered a blessing for the night wolf, and passed on. Each pilgrim stared through Arya as though she were air. She sensed the terrifying confidence that true believers wielded, the certainty that their path was carved by destiny's own chisel. That night Jon confronted Bran in the God's Wood. Crismoon's silver spilled through the branches, glazing the snow with blue light. Joan's breath smoked around words too heavy for warmth. You know what devotion can become, Jon warned. I fought men who burned their own king under a falling star because they believed a prophecy. The scar of those nights at the wall etched grief across his voice. Tell them you don't want worship. Bran looked at his brother with sorrow, ancient as the barrows. It isn't mine to want. The North will tear itself apart, or knit itself together. Bran's hand brushed the rough trunk, knuckles white against winter bark. Listen. Jon heard only wind. Then faintly, beneath the creak of branches, the hush of countless whispers, voices in leaf, water, stone. His spine chilled. He remembered dark gods and darker fates. Yet when Bran spoke again, there was no arrogance, only resignation. If they see their salvation in me, the task falls on us to guide faith rather than deny it. Even as Bran counseled patience, the new faith bred zeal. Disputes over prayer order spilled blood in the alehouse. A farmer who refused to kneel lost his wheat barn to arson during the festival of the first snow. Within Winterfell walls, a brotherhood formed, cloaked in direwolf furs, branding themselves keepers of the site. They patrolled corridors quietly at first, ushering petitioners toward the godswood queue. But soon they prosecuted imagined blasphemies. One night, they dragged a septon visiting from White Harbor to the kennels, and pressed his cheek against a direwolf's snarling jaw until he recanted the seven. The man left Winterfell missing an ear and all illusions of mercy. Far to the south, word filtered to King's Landing. Aegon Targaryen, risen from tales of newborn kingship, now sat the Iron Throne, but his claim still fragile, and the realm laced with fractures. His hand, Tyrion Lannister, interpreted the northern frenzy through the lens of politics. A stark god could unify the North beyond diplomacy, forging a shield that no decree of the crown could penetrate. Whisperers warned of secession masked in piety. The crown dispatched ravens bearing polite inquiries that arrived chilled and unanswered. Within Winterfell, Bran's worship reshaped space. The library became a scriptorium where monks transcribed sightings of the night wolf. Candles multiplied along the stone corridors, their accumulated wax giving halls the scent of tallow-smoked pine. Sansa found the line between rule and ritual blurring. Burglaries fell, neighbors shared winter stores more freely, but clandestine trials replaced the Lord's justice. The sighted ones meted out penance by night. Arya convened with Jon and Sansa behind locked doors. She shed her quiet fury in favor of strategic clarity. We can't kill faith with steel, she said, voice flat. But we can starve it. Jon replied, every good deed they are crediting to Bran. The moment we oppose them, the realm believes we oppose salvation. So we let them walk him to his doom. Arya spat. Sansa placed a palm on the table. We may need to let the fever break on its own. If we clamp down, zeal turns martyrdom into legend. She looked to Jon. We watch, we catalog, we intervene only when life is at stake. Arya bristled at patience but nodded. She preferred shadow work. Observation was a hunt of its own. She stalked the keepers, mapping their movements. In the cellars she discovered an altar, where ironwood idols of Bran bled melted candle wax from carved empty eyes. She learned that they were gathering stories, confessions, dreams, anything that bound hearts tighter to Bran until loyalty replaced blood as the currency of kinship. Across the snows, White Harbor's ships docked flush with pilgrims clutching bundles of salt cod. Even Manderley sailors knelt upon frost-slick planks before passing beneath Winterfell's gatehouse. Trade boomed. Foreign silks draped stone columns, dyes colored the market in summer hues, though winter clawed outside. Yet between prosperity's seams, old grievances resurfaced. Clans of the mountains who had never bent knee to Winterfell bristled at tales of kneeling. On a dawn crusted with hoarfrost, the Flint of Icewater Bay rode into the courtyard, standard fluttering. Lord Harlan Flint dismounted with snow dusting his beard like spilled flour. He demanded an audience. Sansa received him in the solar where sun trickled through shutter gaps. The North kneels only to the North, he said. But I'll not kneel to any boy who sits a tree and calls himself a god. He calls himself nothing. Sansa corrected. The people choose their words. Then curb their tongues before unrest eats us all. My bannermen whisper of crusade. Flint's gaze burned with the heat of ancestral pride. Banish this cult, darn. Sansa spoke calmly. Would you ban birth of the dawn or the melt of ice? Faith grows from roots we cannot reach. Flint slammed a gauntleted fist on the table. Then roots must be ripped out. That night 2 Flint men attempted to steal into the Godswood with torches. They were caught by keepers whose silent vigilance pierced shadows like arrowheads. The invaders were stripped, bound to the weirwood under the aurora of shivering lights, and left shivering until morning when Bran ordered their release and healing. Yet to the keepers, mercy tasted of hesitation. They vowed to safeguard their night wolf with sterner claws. Jon understood the unspoken code of zealotry from his time with the free folk. Survival of faith demanded proof in bold acts. He counseled Bran to speak publicly, to temper extremes with gentle edict. Bran agreed. A platform was raised in the courtyard, torchlit beneath the moon. Crowds amassed, bodies pressed tight for warmth and wonder. Bran, swathed in sable, was carried on a wooden throne. Jon walked beside him, hand upon the hilt of Longclaw. When the crowd fell silent, Bran's voice rippled across them, soft yet heard by all. You kneel to memory, he began, for I am but pages in the book of this land. The gods who whisper through me whisper through every heart that loves the bite of winter air and the hush of falling snow. Do not raise altars to me, raise them to each other. Feed the hungry, house the lost, mend the broken. Then nay. For a heartbeat, the pledge of mercy glimmered. But devotion bends words into shapes it needs. The keepers declared Bran's commandment proof that his will required them to root out any soul failing to honor that mercy. Neighbor watched neighbor. Suspicion replaced frost as the North's constant companion. Sansa, exhausted, took counsel with Maester Wolkan. The Maester traced lines on dusty tomes detailing heresies past. When folk personify their hopes, he said, they become blind to the vessel's mortal limits. She murmured, then tragedy will unveil those limits. In the deep of night, a gang of Flint loyalists infiltrated the crypts beneath Winterfell. Their aim, seize Bran's mortal shell for ransom. They believed hauling a god across the snow would break the spell. But the ravens screamed, forewarned by Bran's far-casting sight. The keepers intercepted 2 corridors away. Steel clashed in the dim torch glow of stone ancestors, dust swirling like ghosts awakened. One Flint raider struck at a keeper, and the blow glanced, carving a chip in the direwolf idol clutched to the keeper's chest. The idol shattered. The keeper, in shock, fell to his knees and bled. Rage exploded among the faithful. They cut the raiders down without quarter. When Jon arrived too late, he found a massacre winding through the crypt tunnels. Blood pooled between sarcophagus lids, dripping from the faces of stone kings. He crouched beside the dying Flint leader, who gasped a single word, freedom, before silence claimed him. The corpses were carried into the courtyard at dawn. Snowflakes settled upon them like gentle shrouds. Bran ordered they be burned with dignity, ashes entrusted to the wind. Yet the keepers, hearts inflamed, seized upon Flint banners as proof of rebellion and demanded vengeance upon the entire clan. Jon forbade a retaliation. The keepers ignored him. Under the black sky, they marched from Winterfell, 100 strong, toward Icewater Bay. Bran watched their departure in stillness, vision following each footstep through layers of now and then. In the hours that followed, visions seized Bran. He found himself soaring above forests where white trees wept sap, watching keepers commit purges, houses aflame, children crying into the snow. He witnessed futures branching like veins, some saved by a word, others broken by silence. He felt all roads converge upon a single truth. He was both the cause and the cure. Sansa found him trembling. She embraced her brother, felt heat radiate from skin grown fevered with visions. End this, she whispered. He looked at her through mist of unknown days. To end it, I must die, or live beyond death. Then choose life, Bran. Let them love a living man, not a god. But belief tolerates no half measures. When the keepers returned, drenched in smoke and triumph, they carried raven skulls atop pikes, trophies of the Flint's totemic birds. The sky wept ash. Jon confronted their leader, a gaunt man named Wilk. "You've dishonored everything," Bran asks. Jon accused. "We carried out his true will," Wilk responded, eyes wild. "The night wolf's mercy cannot bloom until weeds are uprooted." Jon drew Longclaw. "Disband. Lay down arms." Wilk spat. "Kneel, bastard king, or taste the sight's judgment." Steel met steel. The duel was merciless. Wilk fought with the unhinged fervor of one who believes each wound sanctifies. Yet Jon's discipline prevailed. He parried a mad slash, pivoted, and struck. Longclaw's Valyrian steel cleaved Wilk's shoulder. In the hush that followed, Wilk lay dying, whispering Bran's name in reverence, as though the taste of it could carry him beyond pain. The death of their leader shattered the keeper's illusion of immortality. They melted into the crowd, some fleeing north of the wall, others surrendering. Jon, sword dripping, looked toward the Godswood where Bran waited. In that moment, Bran chose humanity. He rolled from the throne harness and pulled himself onto the snowy path unaided, crawling at first, then walking with painful effort until snow swirled about him like petals torn from winter blossoms. The people gasped, witnessing their god limping, face etched with mortal strain. "My legs ache," he announced, voice rawed. "I bleed, I break, same as you. I am your brother, your son, your friend. The old gods speak, but they speak in every river and wolf howl. Not only through me. Kneel no more." Silence broke. A single child stepped forward, offering a hand to steady him. Then another. Soon Bran stood supported by dozens of hands, and the deity's throne lay abandoned. Sansa watched tears freeze upon her lashes, understanding that Bran had surrendered omnipotence for kinship. Reconstruction began not with royal edict, but with communal action. The keepers left swore oaths of service rather than supremacy. Flint survivors and Winterfell's folk built new granaries together. The pilgrim tide ebbed, but faith remained, a gentler devotion woven into daily kindness. Southron lords, relieved, welcomed ravens bearing treaties rather than declarations of holy war. Tyrion toasted Winterfell's resilience in the small council chamber. Seasons turned. Bran returned often to the Godswood, yet when children asked if he were a god, he smiled. "Only a story you tell yourselves," he replied. And children, ever blunt, laughed and threaded daisies through his hair, leaving him crowned not by worship but by innocence. Snow fell, melted, fell again. The north endured, as it had 1,000 times. But in hearthside tales, mothers spoke of the winter their night wolf chose to be a man, and how the choice saved them all. Belief became memory, memory became myth, until one could not say where godhood ended and brotherhood began. Only that within the circle of pines and snow, a boy named Bran once held the promise of both, and lived long enough to teach the difference. Snow softened the wreckage the keepers had left behind, washing the smear of blood from crypt stones and sealing cracked timbers in a white hush. Yet, the North remembered. In the first spring thaw that followed Bran's renunciation, work gangs from Wintertown trudged into the surrounding woods to fell pine for new granaries and bridges. They labored side by side with Flints, Risewells, and Serwans, clans that only half a year earlier would not have shared a campfire. The bark of axes rang like defiant bells in the morning frost, and where once the pilgrim camps had sprawled in ragged circles of piety, tidy rows of seed-grain storehouses rose instead, their roofs shingled with dark spruce that glimmered after rain. Bran watched it all from a litter of firs atop the east-facing battlement. He had insisted his chair be carried there every dawn, so that he might witness walls mended and hearts along with them. A steady wind combed his hair, now longer than Sansa's by 2 finger lengths. The breeze teased silver out of brown, though he had seen only 17 Namadeys. Aging, he told Jon once, was less a matter of years than visions. 1,000 winters lived in the mind tended to bleach a boy before his time. Still, a scouting raven might have mistaken him for any youth of the castle, save that his eyes drifted often into distances no tower could mark. "Looks almost peaceful," Arya said one morning, dropping onto the parapet beside him. She swung her legs over the drop, without flinching at the dizzying height. Needle, sheathed now in pale elk hide, poked from beneath her cloak like a sliver of moon. "It is peaceful," Bran said. "For the moment." She worried a strand of wind-tossed hair from her face. "Men forget too quickly what peace costs. We stole it with blood and pain, then set it down like a cup we're done with. Someone will come along to smash it." Her voice, always older than her years, carried a flat certainty Bran had learned not to question. "They will," he agreed. "But every day we hold on is another thread woven into the fabric. Break enough threads, the cloth holds anyway." His smile was soft. "I've watched tapestries mend themselves through centuries." "You watch too much." Arya bumped his shoulder. "Sometimes living is worth more than knowing." "I try. Living leaves fewer hours for seeing, but the trees keep whispering." He nodded toward the godswood where the weirwood's red leaves trembled, though no breeze reached its heart. "They're uneasy." "About what?" "Change. Old roots fear new soil." He turned to her, the pale, tully eyes clouded. "A seed of the old faith still grows wild. Cuttings of the keepers replant themselves in shadow." Arya's fingers brushed the hilt of needle. "Shadows can be bled." A fortnight later, smoke spiraled over the umber village of Darner's Rest. A squad sent by Lady Lyanna Mormont returned with ashes in their cloaks and terror in their eyes. They spoke of a hooded preacher who arrived barefoot on the eve of the spring lambing. He walked the main street barefoot through snowmelt, chanting in the old tongue, proclaiming the night wolf's mercy had been betrayed by city-born lords who dulled its fangs. By dusk, half the village knelt. By dawn, the doubters swung from the ashwood gallows the preacher's companions had cut. When a Mormont patrol demanded answers, the preacher scattered his flock with a single command. They vanished into the wolf's wood, taking grain stores and newborn sheep, leaving barns aflame behind them. Jon Snow rode north at once with 50 of the Queen's Guard, though Queen Sansa still refused the title her bannermen pressed upon her. He found Darner's Rest a husk of black timbers gnawed by cinders. Charred beams jutted like broken ribs, the stench of wet soot clogging every breath. Survivors, too fearful to weep, knelt in the trampled fields. Jon dismounted. Snowmud, spattering the direwolf stitched upon his cloak. A priest of the seven, one Seraphim by name, guided him to the smoldering sept door. "They burned it first," the priest whispered, voice quivering. "Then they said the ashes would feed 'tween the lips of the nightwolf." Jon's fists tightened. "Did they leave a symbol? A mark?" The priest pointed to what remained of the altar, the rough-hewn face of a direwolf carved in coal, eyes hollow, mouth a fanged snarl. Across its brow someone had scored letters with a hot blade. "We are the Howl." That night Jon bent over a map in the Lord's darkened hall, candlelight painting deep grooves beside his nose. The scars time refused to heal. Around him gathered the commanders of Castle Serwyn, Carhold, Oldcastle. Grey men and iron-eyed women hardened by too many winters. They spoke not of the preacher but of the hunger that rode his wake. The North's early thaw promised a brief planting window. Seed stolen could not be replaced. If the Howl kept raiding, famine would follow. Jon dispatched ravens and rode for Winterfell. Sansa met him in the council chamber, its oaken table almost hidden beneath parchments. She listened while he recounted Darner's Rest. Her face, schooled by Littlefinger once upon a time, revealed nothing save a flicker about the eyes. "The realm south of the neck already doubts our stability," she said at length. "If we appear to war against our own gods, the Iron Throne will have cause to intercede." Tyrion Lannister had written only a moon earlier. "Your brothers welcome in King's Landing to discuss renewed alliances, but rumors of northern heresies chill the small council's wine." Sansa's answer, politely deferred, now seemed too soft. Jon braced gloved hands on the table. Intercede? Aegon's warships on our coast would unite the Howl behind a banner of invasion. His gaze drifted to a corner where a tapestry of Nymeria's crossing hung. Bran must speak again. His last speech nearly carved the North in two, Sansa reminded him. Because the Keepers twisted it, people must hear him plainly, over and over, until no preacher can forge lies in the pauses. It risks elevating him as much as diminishing. She stood, pacing. He renounced godhood. If he's forced to posture as savior again, the faithful may claim it's proof of destiny. The Howl hungers for validation. Ma'am? Nee. Jon exhaled through his teeth. Then we must hunt the Howl quickly and end their sermons with cold iron. Arya emerged from shadow, as if the word iron had summoned her. Cold iron, burning faith, same blade. Let me track this preacher. Sansa's breath caught. You would vanish for moons. I vanished for years before, Arya replied. Only ghosts remember. She tugged needle free, let torch glow stroke its steel. Preachers bleed, Jon. Tell Bran to save his words for children and fools. I'll save the rest. Jon looked between the sisters. We may need both sword and story. Bran dreamed of snow melting on grass so green it hummed. In that dream he heard hooves drum the earth. One stallion, lone rider. The rider wore a mantle woven from wolf fur and crow feathers, face hidden behind an eyeless mask carved of weirwood. Children of the forest paced at his stirrups, their tiny claws raising no dust. Where the rider's horse trod, river ice cracked. Where he spoke, mountains split. Bran jolted awake in the dim of his bedchamber. Heart galloping. The dream resolved into memory. A vision of a man not yet grown but long dead. A hybrid of knights, watch oath, and northern myth. The Howl's preacher, he felt certain, wore that mask. Not a symbol clumsily chosen, but an artifact older than kingdoms. He closed his eyes again and slipped along the roots of the weirwoods, following whispers north and east until they converged in a clearing at the edge of the lonely hills. 100 devotees knelt around a freshly cut heart tree erected like a standard pole, its sap still bleeding. At the circle center stood the masked rider from his dream, arms lifted. The man's voice rippled through Bran as thunder through bone. The wolf was caged by soft hearts, the preacher declared. But we are winter's marrow. We gnaw, we howl, we bite until the world remembers Frost's true face. Bran felt the crowd's pulse in his own blood, adoration wrapped in vengeance. He flinched awake once more. Arya's hunt began under a waxing moon, through pine ridges slick with thaw. She took only needle, a skin of strong wine, and a half-grown hound dog named Gorse with ears too big for his head. Ghost padded alongside, snow ghost once, now more myth than beast to small folk who glimpsed him stalking ranger patrols. Jon entrusted Arya with the dire wolf's silent ferocity. Some tales still whispered that king and beast shared one soul. Let them, Arya thought. Fear could be a better shield than gold. 3 days she moved by night, bedding in fern hollows, drinking stream water sharp with melt. Gorse learned to hush his bark, following Ghost's silent tutelage. On the 4th dawn she found tracks, boot prints arranged in liturgical procession, wide as a dozen men shoulder to shoulder. Each print bisected by a deep line, a staff or banner pole. She angled west, shadowing them. By late afternoon she saw smoke rising in lazy spirals above a coppice. She left Gorse tied in brush and crawled belly-flat to the ridge. Below, a cluster of believers knelt around cookfires. Banners painted with the hollow-eyed wolf rippled in a breeze scented of pine sap and spilt ale. She counted 40, maybe 50. More slipped from tree shade each hour, lugging sacks heavy with pilfered grain. No women, she noted. These were raiding parties gathering to muster. She searched for the preacher. The clearing center remained empty save a crude hearth of piled stones. On one stone sat a mask, weirwood carved in the shape of a wolf skull, jaw elongated, teeth ridged. Sunlight filled the empty sockets like molten gold. Fool thing to leave lying about, Arya murmured. A plan coiled quick as a viper. She waited until dusk cloaked the camp. Fires sparked orange constellations. Men passed skins, singing old dirges repurposed as war hymns. She slipped through cedar shadows, stepped over sleeping forms, and stole the mask. Its wood felt warm, thrumming as though heartbeats echoed inside. She tucked it into a burlap sack and retraced her silent path, only to find a giant shape blocking escape. A man loomed, broad as Hodor had been, eyes reflecting firelight. "Pilgrim?" he asked, voice thick. Arya dropped the sack at her feet. "No, ghost." He frowned, then shouted, "Thief," as needle flashed lightning swift. His cry broke his steel-pierced throat. Blood spattered pine bark. Camp erupted in chaos. Shapes lunged, torches swung. Arya whistled. Ghost burst from dark, jaws crushing a raider's leg. She sprinted, mask under one arm, hound yapping crazily at her heels. They ran until torches faded behind. Ghost vanished back into night's smothering cloak. Gorse whined but kept pace. Hours later, Arya collapsed among willow roots beside the white knife. Dawn found her scrubbing mask blood from needle with river water. She studied the trophy. The wood's grain traced whorls like sleeping eyes, and where the brow curved, she felt a faint pulse beneath her thumb. In Winterfell's library, Bran wheeled between shelves, stacked high with tomes of dead maesters. Arya slammed the mask on the reading table. "I cut it off their altar," she said. "Thought you ought to have your wolf skull back." Bran reached out but halted inches above the pale wood. "It's older than even the first men. I saw it once in a vision worn by a greenseer who called eagles from the cliffs at Storm's End. Its name was the Maw. Ace in Maw of the wolf. Ace in the maw that devours the sun at winter's end." He finally touched it, and the library lanterns dimmed to his sight. Memories cascaded. Cities drowned beneath glacial seas. Children carved in living stone. Gods made and unmade around bonfires of black sap. He tasted each life as iron on the tongue. Sansa, entering with rolled parchment, froze at the tableau. "Is it cursed?" "Perhaps," Bran answered. "But curses, like faith, feed on belief. Worn by me, it might starve." Arya crossed arms. "You already renounced godhood. Symbols speak when men refuse to listen. The maw is being used to twist them. If I reclaim it, I reclaim their narrative." Jon arrived on Sansa's heels. "You'd confront them in person? That preacher could rally hundreds." Bran lifted the mask. "He rallies them because they crave the Night Wolf's return. If what greets them is flawed flesh carrying ancient power with mercy instead of fury, some may listen. None? Some will kill to keep their creed unchallenged," Arya warned. "Which is why you'll come." Bran's smile flickered. "Two wolves, stronger than one." Sansa touched Jon's arm. "It may be our best chance. Gossip of the Maw's theft will spread faster than riders. If Bran appears wearing it, the Howl's authority crumbles." Jon sighed. "Or the Zealots see it as proof of prophecy and frenzy worse." But his eyes betrayed decision. "I ride with you." So it was set. Bran, Arya, Jon, and a cadre of 20 silent wolves, rangers from House Reed, House Glover, veterans chosen for calm over ferocity. Sansa would rule in their absence, cloak clasped with the silver direwolf. Maester Walken sent a satchel of rare tinctures for Bran's pains, though Bran insisted he would not need legs where visions guided. They traveled east of the King's Road, winding through birch valleys glittering with thaw rivulets. Bran wore the maw slung upon his chest like a shield. Its carved fangs bit the morning light, dazzling. Word of it raced ahead. Villagers abandoned chores to kneel by roadside gullies, murmuring "Night Wolf" in tremulous awe. Bran raised his hand each time, not in benediction but in greeting. Palm open, empty. Children smiled. Some touched the hem of his cloak, then darted away, giggling, fearless. On the 7th day they reached the lonely hills, barren plateaus where wind howled through limestone trenches like pipe organs. Fires freckled the shadowed ravines, camps of the Howl massing for assault on Deepwood Moat. Scouts reported 1,000 zealots ringed in worship around their weirwood standard. Night draped the hills with ink. Bran asked to be borne alone into the ravine center. Jon balked. But Bran's insistence held. They must see I fear nothing, and no one fears me. So the litter descended, carried by two grit-eyed reeds, while Joan's men hid along scree ridges, bows drawn down ordy. Arya shadowed deeper still, feet silent as an exhale, needle poised for the first betrayal. A susurrus greeted Bran's approach. Hundreds whisper chanting. Torches raised revealed the preacher, hood back, face gaunt, eyes shining stark as moonlit ice. He wore a wolf's pelt across broad shoulders and carried a staff topped by human skull. Where the maw had rested on that staff, Bran now wore it. The preacher's jaw tightened. "Thief," he hissed. His followers echoed the word like a drum. Bran lifted the mask so Flamelite licked its fangs. "I reclaim what was mine before your grandfather's bones were ash. You lead these good folk astray." "You cast aside your howl," the preacher retorted. "I found it starving." He raised his staff. "Brothers, sisters, the false cub seeks to muzzle us again. Do we kneel?" "No," the chorus thundered. Bran closed his eyes. The weirwood beneath the ravine rooted deep into black soil. He slipped down its nerves into the silent world below. He felt each zealot's heartbeat thrum against his ribs like distant war drums. He tasted their fear, spiced with hunger, laced with grief. In that shared agony he found a wound they all carried, one he too bore. A world that broke promises, kings that failed, gods that stayed silent. He opened his eyes. "You hurt," he said, voice carrying uncannily though he spoke low. "You lost children to winter, lands to war, hope to men who lied. I know, because each of your memories flows through these roots, and through me. I am not your God. I am your witness." Menarau. A hush spread, a blanket smothering the preacher's fury. "I have no temple to offer," Bran continued, "no city of gold, only this. Let your grief be heard. Come, set it before your brothers, your sisters, your enemies, and it will change nothing and everything." The preacher barked a laugh. "Pretty words. Where was witness when the flints burned? When my wife bled birthing a still child while our Lord feasted?" His staff shook. Bran met his gaze. "I was crippled under stone, dreaming of flight I could never taste. I was crushed beside you." The preacher faltered. Bran turned them all outward. "If you require symbol, take it back." He tossed the mask at the preacher's feet. The hollow eyes stared up accusingly. Gasps rippled. Arya's hand tightened on needle. Jon atop the ridge braced for charge. The preacher stooped, lifted the maw. Torches glimmered along its fangs. He trembled, arms shaking with some inner quake. Then, with scream torn from deep belly, he smashed the mask against a stone. It splintered, shards scattering. The sound like ribs snapping echoed. Silence heavier than snow blanketed the hill. The preacher stared at his empty hands, shoulders sagging. "It lied," he murmured. Whether the mask or faith, none knew. Tears streaked soot-grimed cheeks. He sank to his knees. Some zealots looked at him as if waking from dream. Others clutched weapons tighter, disoriented. Bran addressed them. "Build nothing upon hatred. Plant seed. Grow food. Feed strangers. The only howl that matters is the wind. That none can cage." He turned his litter. Jon's archers remained unseen. Arya slipped away. One by one torches lowered, dipped in a gesture neither supplication nor salute, but weary surrender. Months passed. The howl dissolved. Its roving bands broke apart. Some returned to farms. Others joined the night's watch, seeking absolution upon the wall. A few still bristled with old anger, but lacking a symbol, they were sparks on wet stone. Bran refused further titles. He spent days mapping river floodplains, designing levees to guard spring crops. He and Sansa established traveling tribunals combining a maester, a septa, and a wildling matriarch, to hear grievances in every holdfast. Justice rode roads once patrolled by fear. Tyrion rode again, Your northern experiment intrigues. When men kneel to know God, perhaps they hear each other. He invited Bran to King's Landing to discourse with archmaesters on the nature of memory. Bran declined politely. Roots were his roads. Arya taught orphans to wield short blades against straw foes, then left to sail the narrow sea once more, though some nights she returned, ghost-like, tracing her name in the frost upon Bran's window, before vanishing with dawn. Jon journeyed periodically beyond the wall, guiding free folk resettling green valleys. He would return smelling of pine smoke, bring Bran pelts and stories of aurorae draped like goddess veils. In quiet hours Bran sat beneath the weirwood, feeling life pulse through soil. The maw's largest shard lay buried at the tree's base. From that shard sprouted a sapling whose bark shone palest pink, new growth from shattered faith. One evening Sansa joined him, snow melt gleaming on her boots. "Do you regret not keeping the mask intact?" she asked. "Relics bind minds. Shards let light through," Bran said. She knelt, touched the sapling leaf, a five-pointed star of red flesh so thin it glowed. "What will it become? Whatever stories feed it. If love tends the roots, perhaps a tree that shelters rather than devours." She smiled ruefully. "And if hatred feeds it? Then we prune," Bran replied. Summer crept north like a timid child, green and shy. Crops shot up where charred foundations once stood. Trade with the south blossomed along the White Knife. Barges heavy with barley met river galleys bearing Dornish wine. The north, so long defined by survival, tasted not just bread but spice. Yet deeper magic seldom sleeps long. One autumn dusk, Bran's dreams filled with wolves howling from every horizon. He walked among shadowed trunks where snowflakes glimmered like embers. Atop a hill of ice, he met a woman made of night skies, her cloak a swirl of stardust. She pressed a dagger of dragonglass into his palm. "You have healed the heart," she said. "Voice the sigh of black oceans, but the dark beyond the wall grows restless. Memory alone cannot tame it. Blood and fire will. Then it shall." Bran woke, clutching empty air that glittered with frost, and where the frost touched, the pillow smoldered. He lay wondering whether peace was ever more than interlude in a song of endless verses. He rose before dawn, wheeled to the rampart. As eastern sky bled peach and indigo, he watched ravens gather upon the merlons. 100 black silhouettes faced north, necks craned to unseen wind. Bran whispered to them. They rustled wings but did not fly. In their glassy eyes he glimpsed glaciers cracking, dead things stirring beneath aurora curtains. A chill wormed his spine though warm air brushed his cheeks. He thought of the mask's fangs, of zeal made sharp by fear. He thought of shattered shards feeding new sap. Dato. Beyond the wall of sky, winter plotted its inevitable return. Bran wondered whether gods or men would howl loudest when it came. Below, Winterfell's yard stirred with life. Smiths hammering, children laughing, dogs baying. It sounded like courage. He closed his eyes and listened until courage soaked every nerve. Whatever shadows loomed, he would witness them. And when witness failed, when memory proved not enough, he would stand with family, flesh and fragile, to meet the dark. Because gods may inspire, but only brothers and sisters hold back the night. Dawn broke cold and colorless, the sky a sheet of hammered pewter that dulled the courtyards to ash. Bran lingered on the ramparts long after the sun should have warmed the stones, studying the ravens crowding the merlons. They would not fly, though his silent summons urged them northward. At first light, their wings only trembled. By mid-morning they beat the air in restless circles, yet never left the walls. By the hour of the rabbit, when smoke usually drifted from Winterfell's kitchens in mouth-watering coils, Sansa found him still there, eyes half closed, breath misting before lips gone pale. He spoke without looking at her. "They hear music beneath the ice." Sansa folded her arms against the chill. "Is that poetry or warning?" "A song older than memory." He turned the wheelchair until its iron rims rasped the frozen stones. "Something stirs past the shivering sea." Whatever rises in those wastes pulled at the birds until my call could not break their tether. Then tsh. Sansa's face tightened. More dead things? Not dead. Not yet. Before she could answer, a horn sounded at the outer gate. A single mournful note that cracked and wavered like an aging voice. No messenger ever sounded a lone blast unless he brought dire tidings. Bran and Sansa exchanged a look that needed no words. She hurried below while stable hands fetched Bran's litter and rushed him to the yard. A rangy horse clattered through the gate, foam crusting its bridle. Its rider slumped, but kept the saddle by force of will. Charcoal cloak torn and flecked with hoarfrost. A red fox pelt was knotted at one shoulder. The sign of the Woods Watchers, rangers who patrolled the frozen lakes east of Hardhome. 2 guards caught the reins, giving the rider space to drop hard to his knees. The lakes. They're breathing, he gasped, voice raw. Ice heaves like a giant's chest. And the trees, God help us. Roots black as tar, twisting above ground like serpents. We found a village on the southern shore. Every hut empty, meals still hot on the hearth. No bodies, no prints. Gone. Then Tuan. He sagged. Sansa knelt, steady as any maester, and pressed a wineskin to his lips. How far? A week's ride at a gallop. He managed another breath. But the darkness travels faster than horses. He looked up, saw Bran, and his eyes widened with something like desperate faith. My lord, the ravens circled overhead, cawing your name. We followed them to find the trail. I thought, perhaps you sent them to guide us. He hesitated. Did you? Bran's hands gripped the armrests. They flew beyond my reach. He studied the man, taking in the frost burn creeping along his ear tips. Go inside, rest. There are blankets and broth waiting. The rider bowed his head. If we rest, my lord, will the night wait with us? Sansa touched his shoulder. Yes, tonight at least. He allowed himself to be led away, collapsing into the arms of 2 maids. When Bran turned back to the wall, he saw Jon approaching at a sprint. Ed Tollett lumbered behind him, cloak billowing like a torn sail. Dead had ridden down from Castle Black 3 days prior, bearing reports of ghost fires along the far side of the Frostfangs. Now his face was ashen. Jon's was worse, the tight-lipped grimness that men wore just before sounding retreat. You heard? Jon asked. Enough. Ed planted hands on his knees, catching breath. We've counted 6 villages stripped clean, he wheezed. Not dead, empty. Doors open, hearth smoldering. Dogs left chained. No prints anywhere, not even mice. Sansa frowned. Can whites erase tracks? No. Jon's reply was immediate, certain. And every corpse, a white leaves freezes half-rotted. The slaughterhouse crows come in droves. Castle Black scouts saw nothing. No birds, no wolves, not even the dead. Just absence. Ims. Silence that devours, Bran murmured. The ravens overhead let out one collective croak, as if in answer. Jon brushed snow from his shoulders. I leave tonight. 100 rangers, spearwives, anyone willing. We follow the Woods Watchers' path and learn what did this. Sansa stiffened. You gave the wall to the free folk. You're not bound to command. The North doesn't care who commands when winter creeps from its grave. He glanced toward the silent clouds. And I fought darkness too long to let someone else walk blind into its mouth. I'm coming, Arya said. She had appeared so quietly that none noticed until her voice touched the air. She stood beneath the archway, stray snowflakes melting on her dark hair. Ghost paced at her side, hackles rising as if he scented predators on the wind. Jon opened his mouth, but Arya's expression... Argument. Bran turned to the direwolf, then to Jon. Take Ghost. You'll need his nose. And take me. Sansa started. You can't ride through that wilderness. I cannot stay. Whatever stirs calls to the weirwoods. If I'm nearer the song, I might answer. Or silence it. He met Jon's eyes. Carry me in a cage if you must, but I must go. Jon inhaled, nostrils flaring with unspoken worry. Then, slowly, he nodded. We ride at dusk. Preparations clipped through Winterfell like icy wind through corridors. Blacksmiths hammered leggings of boiled leather for those ill-suited to mail. Micken's son tempered spearheads with dragonglass edges pulled from caches left after the long night. Mormont's sisters organized packs of salted meat and dried apples. Few questioned the order. Those who had glimpsed Bran's dreams and Jon's scars understood quiet urgency. By sunset, 94 hearts stood assembled beyond the gate. Sworn men, wildlings, fisherwomen who had lost kin in coastal vanishings, 3 fervent maesters, 2 mute giants from the northern passes, and Davos Seaworth, who had docked that afternoon with a galley of grain only to volunteer before the gangplank cooled. Davos clasped Jon's forearm. Couldn't let you freeze your arse without a proper smuggler to mind the fires. Jon smiled thinner than ice. When did you last smuggle hope? About to start again. He patted the pouch at his belt. Dragonglass seeds. Suppose we'll see if frost soil likes 'em. Meow. Bran was hoisted into a sled strung with elk hides, the maw's remaining shards swinging at his chest. Maester Walken fussed, stuffing tinctures among the blankets. You must pace your visions. Too many in your mind may splinter like shock ice. I will do what's needed. Walken sighed. That's what every Stark says before the frost takes a finger, or something dearer. Bran managed a wry smile. Then keep the hearth burning. Something must thaw us when we return. The column moved out under a half-moon. Snow fell not in gentle flakes, but in tiny hard crystals that stung cheeks and rung helms like distant chimes. Ghost padded at the fore, Arya easily matching his long stride. Jon rode beside Bran's sled, Longclaw strapped across his back, as if its weight steadied his thoughts. Around them, torchlight bobbed in the gloom, a swarm of fireflies marching into oblivion. They made good speed through the King's Road ruins, crossing bridges rebuilt from charred planks after wildling raids years earlier. But 3 days in, the world tilted. Trees separated like curtains and revealed emptiness. Whole groves felled without blade. Trunks scattered as though giants had swept them aside. Sap bled black from ragged stumps, pooling in slick puddles that steamed against the cold. The air smelled not of resin but of iron and forgotten cellars, dust decades thick. Davos muttered, "Gods preserve us." Arya knelt by a stump, running gloved fingers over the cut. No axe, torn up from beneath. She glanced at Bran. Roots ripped loose. Bran's eyes glazed. He reached down the fissure with his mind. Roots squirmed like pale worms, twisting away from something unseen, fleeing upward, not burrowing down. Terror radiated from broken fibers. He flinched. They crawled from soil like animals escaping fire. Ed spat. "Trees don't crawl, begging your pardon." "These did." Bran's voice barely carried. "And whatever chased them still hunts." Jon gave the order to press on, doubling sentries. That night, they camped in a shallow dell. Rangers ringed tents with dragonglass stakes hammered into frozen earth. Fires were forbidden. Their light could betray them. Instead, they huddled beneath wool and whispered old Night's Watch songs about walls of snow higher than pride. Near midnight, Bran slipped into a waking dream. He floated above the camp like drifting frost. Ghost glowed white among sleepers, eyes ember-red scanning shadows. Beyond the dell, down a wind-carved ravine, silence thickened. Bran followed it, gliding unseen until he reached an iced-over pond cratered with holes. Something pulsed under the surface, luminous threads weaving patterns across black water. He dove through brittle ice and sank into a tunnel of light. At its end loomed a vast chamber under the earth, a cathedral of blue crystal alive with heartbeats. Yet no hearts beat inside, the throb came from the stone itself. And perched on ledges were human shapes. Hundreds, maybe thousands, encased in frost cocoons. Unblinking eyes stared outward, pale as fish bellies. Their mouths gaped, not screaming, but drinking in the crystal glow like infants at a teat. Bran's breath caught. He recognized one face, a man he had seen in White Harbor last year, laughing over mulled wine. Another was a girl from the kitchens at Carhold, all unmoving yet not dead, held in abeyance. A thrum louder than before shook the cavern. Light coursed through veins of ice, converging on a dark knot at the far wall. Bran reached toward it, but a voice spoke inside his skull, neither gentle nor angry, simply fact. Not yet. He jolted awake, snow caking his lashes. Jon crouched over him, worry carved across brow. You whispered, Jon said. Then you screamed. Bran swallowed. They're alive, frozen but alive, waiting. Waiting for what? Arya asked. She'd materialize like shadow. For it to finish breathing. Bran's gaze roved the darkness beyond torches. We must find the heart cave and cut the lungs before the next breath. Ed muttered. And how big's a lung carved in rock? Ace big as the north, Bran murmured. They marched the next morning with renewed urgency. Trails vanished. Compasses spun. Several times Ghost halted. Hackles raised, but no sound followed. The cold deepened past natural frost, until breath froze mid-exhale, falling as tiny crystals that clicked upon armor. Rangers wrapped scarves over mouths, yet tongues numb inside 4 heartbeats. At dusk of the 6th day, they reached the milk-white lakes. All was flat as a polished mirror, but the ice moved, heaving in long, slow swells that lifted the entire crust a finger's breadth, then lowered it again. Beneath the translucent skin, something glowed faintly blue, pulsing like a sleeping beast's throat. Davos scratched his beard. I sailed seas calm and seas angry. Never saw a frozen one breathing. Jon ordered half the party to skirt east with Arya and Ghost, seeking shore caves. He remained with Bran and the remainder, venturing onto the ice. Each step echoed strangely, as though they walked on a drum stretched over an abyss. Beneath, those blue lights danced. Lightning quivered through water shot with black sediment. Occasionally, shapes floated near the surface, faces pressed to ice, eyes wide, lips parted. But when Bran knelt to look, the faces drifted away. They reached a mound jutting above the lake center, ice piled into a dome, split by a fissure half-sealed with rime. Warm air, rank as cellar mold, flowed from the crack. Frost melted on helms and steam. Jon motioned 2 Mormonts forward. Together they pried space wide enough for Bran's sled. Bran inhaled sharply. The maw of the earth welcomed him with humming pressure. This is the throat. Jon debated leaving Bran topside, but Bran's calm refusal won. The roots end here. Torches were lit, dragonglass spearheads affixed to their poles. Down they crawled, rappel ropes anchored to frozen ribs. The passage twisted deeper than Winterfell's oldest well. A wind blew upward, carrying faint clicks, stone against stone, or jaw against jaw. The corridor emptied into the crystal cavern Bran had seen in vision. Even prepared, his breath hitched. The scale defied reason. A vaulted cavity where translucent pillars, thicker than tower keeps, supported a ceiling crusted with rime stars. Within each pillar, rivers of light pulsed like veins. And the bodies, suspended, linked by icicles that penetrated wrist, ankle, heart. Some still wore furs. Others hung naked, pale as dandelion fluff. Not one bled. Maester Eagle whispered a prayer to the 7. It died in the hush. Jon stepped forward. Free them. His voice cracked like young bark. Rangers moved, axes raised. But the preacher's staff lay against a pillar, the maw's splinter still set in its tip. Bran gestured. Wait. He rolled toward the far wall where the veins converged. The glow here brightened, washing his face in azure. Within a lattice of ice, a sphere pulsed, a dark seed dancing with threads of iris light. It looked organic yet forged of obsidian and starlight, throbbing in slow tempo. Bran pressed his palm to the barrier. A voice thrummed, neither life nor death, only enduring hunger. Feed or be feed. Jon's hand landed on Bran's shoulder. What is it? Birth. Bran's throat tightened around the word. A god not yet formed. The earth itself gestates it. All those people, food for its first breath. Arya emerged from tunnel opposite, flanked by Ghost and 3 free folk. Caves on the east side, full of bodies same as this. We counted near 3,000. Bran's mind raced. If the seed hatches, it will drain them, then call for more. Village after village until the north is hollow. How do we kill an unborn god? Davos asked. Starve it. Bran tapped the dragonglass shard in the staff. Dragonglass is crystallized fire. Fire consumes hunger. Jon nodded grimly. Then we carve a wound big enough for burning. Axes chopped at the pillar bases that housed the seed's veins. Crystal splintered, ringing like bronze bells. Light flickered. Bodies twitched in frozen chains. Bran directed teams. Sever that vein. Wedge dragonglass there. Quickly. The ceiling responded with cracking roars. Flakes of ice drifted like snow. When enough veins lay open, Bran raised the staff. Its dragonglass fang glowed red for an instant. Heat without flame. He drove it deep into the seed. Sound burst. Subsonic. Shaking marrow. Veins flared white, then blackened. The suspended body spasmed. Frost shivered free. A rushing exhale swept the cavern as though the earth sighed. No, screamed. Cracks raced along walls. Crystals shattered. Raining shards. Jon yelled, "Out!" Rangers cut down nearest victims. Slinging limp forms over shoulders. Bran's sled jolted as Jon and Arya hauled it. Behind them, the black seed fractured. From its wounds spewed inky vapor that smelled of worlds lost. But the dragonglass embedded at its core glimmered, and where red met black, fumes recoiled, sizzling back into nothing. They scaled ropes, hands bleeding, while caverns caved. The sled scraped rock. Bran felt each jar like stones in his veins. At last they burst from the fissure as the dome split, ejecting a geyser of steam that froze mid-air, then crashed like glass rain around them. Lake ice buckled, waves of slush sweeping outward. They ran, not toward shore but toward the ring of Mormonts flashing torches. Together, they dragged limp, rescued villagers onto sledges. Thunder bellowed beneath their boots. The lake center imploded, water rushing to fill void. Bran looked back once. Blue fire spiraled downward, swallowing itself. Then silence fell, broken only by the ragged breathing of the living. They made camp 3 miles south, on high ground sheltered by pines. Fires were kindled. No fear of discovery now. Freed villagers awoke shivering, eyes fogged. Some sobbed, others stared at flames in mute wonder. Bran moved among them, offering gentle words, listening to their half-remembered dreams of a flawless blue city where pain dissolved into music. They wept harder, realizing that paradise had been prison. Jon watched, exhaustion sagging shoulders, but relief glinting in dark eyes. We saved them. Bran shook his head softly. We saved ourselves. A god that feeds on silence would have corrupted every belief left in the north until worship became harvest. He looked skyward. Clouds parted to reveal stars winking like frost sparks. The ravens that refused to leave Winterfell now rode those winds, scattering across firmament. Arya approached, wiping blood from her sleeve. When does it end? Bran smiled tiredly. When we stop being afraid of beginnings. She tilted her head. Poet. Brother too. They clasped forearms, a promise forged in cold wars and colder nights. Months later, grass grew where ice had breathed. The milk-white lakes receded, revealing pebble beaches littered with glass shards, soon gathered by fisherfolk who claimed they sang in moonlight. Winterfell opened its gates to returnees, adopting the orphaned among them. Songs were sung of the night the ice womb shattered, and the refrain always ended in laughter, because laughter filled the space silence once tried to claim. The maw's sliver remained buried beneath Bran's weirwood sapling. Visitors sometimes claimed to hear faint music near that young tree, not haunting but hopeful, like flutes carved from willow. Some said the tune echoed the beating heart of a god content to sleep forever, guarded by mortals it once sought to devour. And Bran, who had tasted the edge between witness and deity, rolled daily among his people, listening more than speaking. When children asked about the crystals under the lake, he told them, "The earth dreamed a hunger, and we woke it in time to feed it love." Most children nodded, satisfied. A few asked if hunger ever sleeps for good. Bran would glance to where Jon sparred with young rangers, where Arya taught street orphans how to stand tall, where Sansa nursed their kingdom through steady seasons, and he would answer, "Only as long as we do not." Through winters yet to come, the North would remember, not the silence, but the voices that broke it. Snowmelt trickled through Winterfell's courtyards, singing soft over flagstones worn smooth by centuries of boots and hooves. The runoff carried flecks of black crystal, crumbs of the shattered ice god's womb that rangers had gathered in pouches, only to find, days later, leaking from seams and seams unbroken. Children chased the glitter downstream, giggling as the sunlight refracted midnight blues across their palms. No one tried to stop them. In the months since the long march north, fear had learned to coexist with wonder. Bran watched from his tower window while stable hands spread fresh straw in the kennels below. He felt each scrap of straw as it scratched stone, sensed the horsehair trapped between bristles, noted the mites that clung to hair like soldiers scaling walls. The reach of sight had widened since the cavern's collapse. Sometimes he welcomed that gift. Other times he longed to forget the shape of might claws. But forgetting was dangerous, he reminded himself. Forgetting bred silence, and silence had nearly devoured 3,000 lives. A knock rapped the doorframe. Samwell Tarly entered, cloak spattered with mud and rain. He carried a leather folio bound by twine and excitement. "Messages from Old Town," he announced. Cheeks flushed from a windy ride. "And 2 ravens from King's Landing, though one arrived." "Curious." Bran cocked his head. "Curious how?" Sam swallowed. "It spoke, or croaked, words." 3. Precisely. Blood remembers salt, then it died. Bran's fingers tightened on the armrest. The phrase drifted through memory like half-forgotten song. "The drowned gods of the Iron Islands," he murmured. "But older than them, older than houses built of stone." "Where's the body?" Maester Walken sealed it in a jar. Its eyes turned silver the instant breath left it. "And now?" Bran's gaze drifted to the glassy sky. A front of slate clouds bruised the horizon, moving against the prevailing wind from east to west. "Storms walk backward," he said. "And ravens speak riddles. The sea stirs." Sam set the folio on Bran's lap. ... Archmaester Marwyn wrote first. Bran untied the twine. Scanning lines drafted in hurried consonants. Sam continued, "He writes of tremors beneath the sunset sea. Tide gauges at Old Town rising half a hand in one turn of the moon. He fears undersea vents, but notes strange glassy stones washing ashore. Obsidian, yet buoyant. Then?" Bran felt them in his palm, phantom warm like hearts that never cool. "Eggs," he whispered. Sam nodded. "Marwyn wonders the same." The conclave scoffed, until gulls carried a dead seal pup, whose ribcage, blossomed with a crystal-hued swear, was growing. Outside, a raven shrilled. Dozens answered, fluttering above the weirwood like blackened snow. Bran almost reached to quiet them, then hesitated. He listened instead. Beneath the chatter, a pulse, slow and patient as tide. Sam turned pages. "Second letter is from Tyrion Lannister." His tone grew drier. "He writes eloquently about trade tariffs and northern grain, then hints the crown might dispatch friendly envoys to verify the North's continued fealty. He ends with a postscript. 'Have a care for myths that hatch twice.'" Bran smiled thinly. Tyrion's quills never dull. He tapped the letters. "Tell Sansa." "She'll know which smiles to send back." Sam lingered. "There's more." He produced a rolled parchment. "Sealed by the High Priestess of the Red Temple in Volantis. The wax bore the fiery heart of Arlor." Bran unrolled it. Scarlet ink traced characters of Old Valyrian, but the words formed not on parchment but in Bran's mind. "We felt the false star die beneath the ice." Two burn in the sea, and the cold world warms to claim them. Choose the hand that quenches, or the hand that feeds. The message ended with a glyph. Half sun, half drowning hand. Sam shuffled. I can't read Valyrian so quick. Is it threat or warning? Both, Bran said. And invitation. Sansa gathered council in the Solar. Jon had returned from supervising farmsteads near the Barrowlands. Cheeks wind-worried, but eyes bright from honest labor. Davos seated himself opposite, palms pressed to the table's rim, as if bracing for storm pitch. Arya leaned against the mantel, boots scraping hearthstone. Ghost sprawled at her feet like living snowdrift. Sam hovered with parchment bundles, and Maester Wolkan unpacked jars of murky seawater snagged from the shivering sea, each containing a pebble of black glass that spun slowly as if alive. Bran recited the missives. Quiet settled like snowfall when he finished. Jon broke it first. Aegon will use any excuse to march. He sees northern independence gnawing at the realm's spine. Sansa tapped Tyrion's letter. His friendly envoys will be eyes disguised as trade negotiators. We welcome them publicly, feed them feasts, show them our mills. But we choose the road they travel and what shadows they glimpse. Davos knuckled his beard. We might also send our own envoys south, a Stark with no fear of dragons. Arya smiled. Dragons fear me, not I them. Jon shot her a look. You're needed here. If seas spit obsidian eggs and priests mumble of quenched stars, we'll need your blade north of the neck. Thou. Sam hesitated. Actually, if I may. All eyes turned. The Citadel compiled lore on volcanic vents southwest of the Shield Islands. Should eruptions birth crystal forms, maybe they're linked to the shivering sea tremors. It might help to send me with those friendly envoys. I could compare specimens, gather data. Sansa regarded him kindly. Sam, the world needs your mind. But King's Landing coils with vipers. Are you prepared? Davos chuckled. He slew a white walker, my lady. Court gossips a milder serpent. Then the Pamsetero. Sam reddened. I'll manage. Bran felt the council's pulse. Fear, resolve, threads interweaving. Sam goes, he said. Take Alice Karstark as shield. She knows how to smile like a silent blade. Sansa nodded. Done. Jon folded arms. What of the sea eggs? Do we harvest or destroy? Bran closed his eyes. Roots whispered of tides older than ice. We find one intact. Bring it here. We listen. Ghost whined. Arya's eyes narrowed. Listening got us cavern gods and frozen prisoners. And save them. Bran met her gaze. Knowledge unwatched becomes a dagger in others' hands. Better we wield it, or at least blunt it. Jon ran a palm through raven hair. I'll sail, 10 days to Old Town if the winds hold. Davos slapped the table. And you'll need a smuggler captain who can shave 2 off that. Sansa lifted a brow. Our king and our smuggler in one boat. Seems half the North's luck rides anchor. Bran felt a tug in his chest. Future paths branching like ripples. He nodded. Luck and love. Preparations unfurled quickly. The merman's bride Davos Leanhult cog, rear-rigged with a taller foremast, took on supplies enough for 40 days. Jon's elected 20 men, equal parts free folk and northern knights, to demonstrate unity. Sam and Alice bore letters of safe conduct and a chest of grain-dusted silver wolves, a gift and reminder of northern harvests. Arya spent hours drilling deckhands in knife work. Though she would not sail, her lesson lingered in their calloused palms. On the eve of departure, Bran wheeled to the godswood. Moonlight silvered the heart tree, leafless now, yet still bleeding red sap that steamed in the chill. He reached, touched its face. Vision swallowed him, waves pounding cliffs under starless night. A shadow unmoving atop basalt, all angles, no flesh, holding something the size of a child in jagged arms. Lightning flashed, and Bran saw a face carved in smoke, eyes of sea stone void. He tore free, breath ragged. The tree's grooves bled deeper. Behind him, Sansa whispered, "Bad omen?" "All omens are instructions," he said. "We choose how to read." She placed a hand on his shoulder. "Read for me." He hesitated then. "South and sea will test us, but the greater shadow creeps inland." He glanced up where branches clawed sky. "The silence we killed returns quieter, wearing different bones." Sansa's fingers tightened. "Will faith shatter it again?" "Faith, no. But the love that undergirds faith, yes." He turned to her, eyes ancient. "Stand ready. Winter's memory hasn't finished teaching us." The Merman's Bride slipped from White Harbor before dawn, sails taut in northerly breeze. Bran watched from the battlements until the ship became a gull speck, then vanished. He felt the severing like a thin cord cut. They set about inland concerns. Rivers swelled higher than any spring flood, devouring banks despite snowpack lighter than usual. Maester Walken's barometers recorded unseasonable pressure troughs, pulsing from the sea. Farmers near Widow's Watch found their wells tasting faintly of brine. Bran dispatched riders with bundles of charcoal to filter water, and tasked the reeds to map salt blooms creeping through peat. One salty dawn, Arya returned from a circuit of smaller villages, with reports of pilgrims again, this time wearing sash knots woven of straw and black glass. They called themselves the Tide-Marked, claiming the shattered god's fragments were tears that bade them wander until they reached water's edge, where they would taste earliest dawn. They preached not vengeance but surrender. When the sea called, they must walk in. Already 3 Frey shepherd families vanished from cliffs near Hornwood. Bran sighed. When gods die, their shards spawn cults. He rolled a fragment between fingers, its warmth less sinister than the cavern crystal, yet insistent like a heartbeat. Arya spat, then grind every shard to dust. Dust still speaks, only harder to hear. She scowled. So we let them drown? We net them before waves claim. Bran summoned ravens with a thought. He sent messages to coastal watchposts, intercept wanderers, offer warm beds, remind them love roots deeper than waters call. But he knew nets fray. Weeks later, a raven from Davos made landfall Old Town amid storms, harbor awash with black stones. Jon ventured with maesters to catacombs. Rumor of singing egg draws crowds. Ships lost on return path vanish with sails aglow. Will update. Night after letter arrived, Bran entered dream waters. He found himself floating above Old Town's high tower, beacon dark, replaced by a single orb pulsing like heart in its lantern room. Streets below clogged with folk chanting rhythmic syllables, first calm, then louder, building to roar. From the harbor, a ship sailed backward, prow facing quay, but stern cutting seaward way. Its sails shimmered with greenish light. Crew stood rigid, heads raised to the stars though daylight bathed them. In the hold pulsed a sphere of obsidian, veins of molten emerald coursing. Bran descended through deck planks, slipped inside the egg. Within, void speckled by far suns, and at its center, a spiral path downward, where children ran laughing, hair aflame but unscorched. They beckoned him. He nearly followed, then a wave crashed, cold as wall ice, and Arya's voice cut through. "Wake up." He blinked upon a cushion in the library. Arya crouched, face taut. "You spoke tongues." Ghost howled, till wolf's blood chilled. Bran steadied breath. "Jon's in danger." Her jaw tightened. "Then we ride to the sea and steal a boat." "You sail," he corrected. "I take wind." Sansa argued. Winter roads, pirate coves, royal suspicion. But Arya's resolve outlasted objection. Within days she, Ghost, and a skeleton crew boarded the Winter's Spear at Deepwood Motte, hugging coasts south. Bran remained, yet his reach traveled. Each night he slipped from weirwood to weirwood, leaping down the trunk network like a spider across silk, edging toward Old Town's Godswood, a mere sapling in a courtyard behind the citadel. On the 7th attempt he breached its bark, and collided with another presence inside. Not a green seer. Something older, leaner, curiosity tasting of rusted iron and sea brine. Bran recoiled, and the presence probed, flicking memories like pages. The frozen seed, the mask, the breath lake. It rasped a thought. You starved the child ice. Now feed the child wave. Bran pushed back. No more children for your hunger. The presence laughed, a hollow trickle as if water drained through bones. Then it withdrew, leaving the sapling empty, the courtyard lanterns flickering out, though no wind stirred. Bran woke trembling. He summoned Sansa and Maester Wolkan, urged evacuation of lowlands near White Knife Estuary. Evacuees grumbled, but when the river surged that night, cresting walls never before kissed, they thanked the Lady of Winterfell with tears. Far south, Arya's ship skirted the stepstones, evading sail fleets drawn by whispers of royal bounties on black crystals. At dusk on the 15th day, Old Town's high tower rose from mist, beacon extinguished. Sails furled, rowers dipped silent oars. Ghost growled low. Dock pilings shone wet, but no harbor hands roped lines. A hush blanketed city like dense fog, stifling gull cries. Arya led shore party up deserted quays. Doors hung open. Cooking fires smoldered unattended. Cats prowled empty stalls chasing nothing. In a tavern by the Sailor's Walk, ale overflowed mugs as if vessels had vanished mid-toast. Ghost guided them to the high tower steps. The iron gate yawned. Inside, braziers guttered. Shadows danced across stone slabs carved with nautical runes. Footprints shimmered faintly, not dust but soft light. Leading upward. Arya followed, 10 flights past murals depicting the Battle of the Honeywine, past balconies where astronomers once charted stars. At each landing the light prince grew brighter. When she reached the beacon chamber at the summit, the prince vanished, replaced by a single pool of radiance surrounding something that hovered 2 hands above the floor. The egg. Larger than she expected, closer to the size of a boar. Black glass, shot with emerald lightning. It rotated slowly, humming a cadence that vibrated bone. Jon stood before it, sword unsheathed but point lowered. Sam and Alice flanked him, eyes wide with equal awe and dread. Davos knelt adjusting a bundle of fireworks, wildfire signal rockets stolen from Tyrell stores. Arya slipped beside Jon. Planning to hatch it? He flinched, then grinned with relief. Planning to stop it from hatching at all. She eyed the rockets. Blowing the top off Old Town? No. Sam tapped a scroll. The black crystal seems to feed on starlight refracted by the beacon lens. We block the lens, starve it, maybe lull it. Arya glanced upward. The lantern's domed roof had opened like a blooming metal flower to the night, though cloud cover masked the moon. She saw gears pried by force. Lens stays fixed open, I guess. Mechanisms fused, Davos said. Molten stone, looks like. Jon nodded toward the egg. But every hour clouds drift. Stars peek through. Pulse grows. We patch roof. We buy time. Arya reached into satchel, produced a coil of shadowcat hide and iron pitons. Climbing kit. Show me the rafters. They set to work. While Jon and Aelys hammered braces across skylight joints, Arya scaled framework, stitching hide over gaps. Sam monitored pulse readings, his sextant repurposed as light gauge. Davos readied a cask of Kraken ink. When the last seam closed, they splashed ink across leather to absorb starlight. The room dimmed, humming dropped. Ghost lifted muzzle, ears pricked. Arya froze. A low chant rose from streets below, carried through arrow slits, thousands of voices humming the same cadence the egg once crooned. The city itself had become a lens, mortal throats focusing worship upward. The egg brightened again, feeding through stone and air. Jon cursed softly. They replaced stars with song. Sam flipped pages. There's mention of sound dekeating stones in scrolls from Valyria, music that fractures minds if blocked. Ace peered over the railing down the central stair column. Throats we can't shut. Too many to enthrall. Arya's gaze flicked to the egg. Then break the eater. Davos raised brow. Slice that? Need bigger knife. Dragon glass. She reached into pocket, produced a shard Bran had given her. He said, "Love roots deeper than water." She tossed it to John. John caught it, felt warmth pulse. "Love can shatter hunger," he muttered. He strode to the egg, long claw in one hand, glass shard in the other. Sam and Davos dragged a mirrored shield between him and object, deflecting pulses so brightness flared harmless along walls. John pressed glass to surface. Sparks flew. Smelled of pine and tide. The egg screeched, pitch fractured air. Arya clamped hands over ears as stone cracked underfoot. Below, chant turned to wails. The egg fissured, leaking vapors that sang of distant shores and drowned joys. John pushed deeper. Glass sank, hissed, then the egg imploded. Silent flash, shards whipping outward. A fragment grazed Arya's arm, blood spritzed. Light died. The chamber plunged into darkness, broken only by guttering braziers. Sound below ceased. Then cries of confusion echoed. Sam lit lantern dotting. The egg lay dust and shards. At its core, a palm-sized ember flickered, a coal of living emerald. It pulsed weakly. John lifted it with cloth. Arya inspected blood beating on her cut, crimson laced with tiny sparks. "Burn it?" Davos extended wildfire rocket. "Ship it to the deepest trench and let the sea choke." John looked at Ember, then at Ghost sniffing it. "Not yet. Bran will know." Arya grimaced but nodded. "Then let's quit this tower before city folk realize we killed their lullaby." Bran sensed the egg's death before ravens arrived. A pressure behind eyes eased, like a stopped drumbeat. But in its place came a new rhythm. Heartbeats not one, but two. The sea child starved, yet its twin beneath a different horizon still fed. He summoned Sansa and Wolkan. "Prepare Winterfell for siege, not steel, but faith. Build granaries bigger, halls wider. Refugees will come when waves roll inward." Sansa's mouth set. "How long?" "1 season, maybe 2. She exhaled. "We'll need allies south. If King's Landing suspects we hoarded grain, then let them come." Bran's eyes burned with calm fire. "We'll feed them too." Wolkan adjusted spectacles. "But our harvest." "Hope multiplies when shared," Bran said. "Fear when hoarded." A horn sounded. Riders from the neck with tidings. The barrier river reversed flow for 2 days, flooding fields with brackish water. Fish with scales of black crystal washed ashore. When cooked, they sang through teeth, driving listeners mad until the flesh cooled. Reeds burned entire shoals. Bran closed fists. Child waved tantrums for its sibling dead. Night fell. Bran wheeled alone into Godswood. He placed hands upon sapling grown from maw shard. Leaves glowed faint. He breathed memory into soil. Laughter, sacrifice, the heartbeat of 3,000 freed souls. The glow brightened, seeping into roots that stretched north and south, east and west, linking trees like veins. He whispered an invitation. "Come to the hearth, those who fear the water's call. Find fire, not drowning." In dreams that night, shepherds near Lonely Light saw a silver wolf stride across tide foam, beckoning them inland. Fishermen in the stepstones awoke on decks, pointed new north. Sailors lost at sea followed a ghost lantern east until dawn revealed rivers they'd never sailed yet, somehow recognized. The world bent not to Bran's will, but to love's request. Joan's party sailed home on the battered merman's bride, holds laden with rescued citizens, no longer enthralled but listless, as if half of every soul still lingered with the drowned song. Among them rode Maester Sam and his crates of data, Davos nursing cracked ribs, Aelys ever vigilant, Arya sharpening a new dagger of egg-glass. In Joan's pouch, the glowing ember pulsed. Heartbeat steady, like an infant sleeping. Snow greeted their return even though Calendar insisted late summer. Bran met them in the yard. Jon handed over the ember. Bran cradled it, felt warmth spread not to skin but to memory, summers of childhood snowball fights. Mothers humming at dusk, Hodor's laugh. This ember fed on joy, not silence. A twin of hunger, yet shaped by different womb. Bran looked to his siblings. This one lives not to devour but to remember. The sea child sought to drown memory in quiet. This seeks to keep memory burning. Arya eyed it skeptically. A crystal baby god of nice thoughts. A mirror, Bran said. We decide what it reflects. Jon shrugged. Then what do we do with it? We plant it. In Winterfell's Godswood they dug a hollow near the heart tree, nestled the ember among roots, covered it with rich soil. The glow seeped into ground, and above, buds sprouted on branches, though frost rhymed air. Saplings across the north answered, unfurling leaves in cold. Villagers woke to unexpected green and wept for reasons they could not name. Songs spread, not hymns of zeal or chants of surrender, but lullabies children sang to younger siblings, tunes harvesters hummed while stacking sheaves, melodies taverns carried without knowing the words. Each note a seed of memory. And on a distant shore where storms birthed crystal children, waves encountered invisible breakwaters of song, fell back in foam, and forgot. Years flowed. King Aegon never marched. When he tasted northern bread delivered by Sam's envoys, he ordered grain stores built along Blackwater Rush patterned on Winterfell's silos. The Red Temple sent emissaries who studied the living sap and declared it a second hearth of Arlor, but were content when Bran showed them the flames on snow-lit branches that hurt no one. They left carrying jars of warm leaves that glowed red at night, lighting slums of Volantis with gentler fire. The tide-marked cult faded. Its last pilgrims settled in White Harbor, opening a bakery whose breads bore sea salt crystals sparkling like midnight shards. He named it Silence, Broken, and offered loaf and story to all who entered. As for Bran, he journeyed rarely. Instead he listened, guiding the pulse of roots, mending fissures and hearts before they crack stone. He understood now. Gods were not beings but choices repeated until they shaped the world. Some choices froze lakes and hushed mouths. Others lit candles in blizzards. He chose each dawn to be witness and warden of memory's flame. One twilight, he wheeled to the battlements where Jon leaned, watching children mock duel with sticks. Snowflakes drifted even as sunset burned orange. Still winter and summer in one breath, Jon said. Balance is not calm, Bran replied. It's tension cherished. Jon chuckled. You sound older than maesters. Bran smiled. I am north and south of myself now. Below, Arya coached a shy girl how to lunge, murmuring praise. Ghost napped by the heart tree, fur sprinkled with glowing petals. Sansa crossed the yard to greet a caravan of Dornish merchants, their bright garbs stark against snow. Jon sighed contentedly. Do you think peace will hold? No, Bran answered. But love will. And love is the forge where peace is recast each time it shatters. Now. They fell into companionable silence, breathing air scented by resin and distant bread. The first star winked overhead, reflected in 1,000 tiny leaves that glimmered on branches once bare. Somewhere deep under root and stone a heartbeat answered. Not a god, but the memory of all they chose to keep alive. And so Winterfell shone in a world forever tilted between frost and flame, held steady by mortals who understood at last that divinity was not a crown to wear, but a fire to tend. Each spark another story, each story another soul saved from the drowning hush. The hour before dawn belonged to wolves and ghosts, and the keen-edged silence between them. And in that hour, Bran Stark opened his eyes to a freezing room that smelled of applewood smoke and thawing earth. His dreams still clung like spider silk, great black ships rolling on seas of mirror-bright ice, a forest of petrified kelp rising where no forest should, Arya's laughter echoing in caverns beneath waves, Jon's voice calling names Bran did not know and might never meet. Dreams were memory scaffolding, visions that might become, or might break the instant they touched daylight, but lately they felt heavier, as though the future were no longer mist but stone waiting to fall. He rolled from his pallet to the window and looked across Winterfell. Fresh snow dusted roof slates, frosting the newly sprouted leaves of the heart tree. Thin plumes rose from forges and bakeries. Somewhere, a rooster crowed, off-key and earnest. The world was waking again, as it always did. But Bran could taste tension in each breath, subtle as ash on the wind. Outside his door a quiet cough announced Maester Wolkan. The maester entered with a bowl of steaming porridge dotted by crimson berries, an early gift from greenhouses Sansa had ordered built along the inside of the curtain wall. When Bran thanked him, Wolkan hesitated. "More reports in the night," he said. "Caravans from the high road claim the Barrowlands are plagued by sudden fogs that whisper." A shepherd boy tried to follow one and vanished. His hound returned with wool tangled in its teeth, and eyes glazed white like cold milk. Bran stirred the porridge, watching berries swirl. Whispers of fog, eyes of milk. Sea hunger crawls inland through air now. Should I send riders to investigate? Send healers first. Fear is a wound before its blood. He tasted a spoonful. Sweet, warm, immediate. And asked Sansa to increase watchfires along the barrows. Light drives murmur fogs back to shore. Then now Wolkan bowed, scribbling notes on his wax tablet. When he departed, Bran ate methodically. He needed strength for the council that loomed. King Aegon and his royal delegation would arrive by midday. Targaryen banners already fluttered beyond the last river, and rumor galloped faster. The Dragon King sought to bind North and crown with bonds deeper than grain or paper. Some whispered marriage, others an exchange of heirs. Bran knew truth lay in subtler places, someplace between longing and dread. When the bowl emptied, he called ravens without opening his mouth. They gathered on the sill, black pearls against whitened sky, heads cocked to listen. He sent them across rivers and moors, each bearing a single silent message. Hold the fire in your heart. Water cannot drown the flame you feed. It was not order or prophecy, but reminder. Sometimes reminders mattered more than commands. The royal train arrived beneath banners that cracked like sails. Horses pranced, hooves tossing snow like surf. Black cloaks edged in silver flashed among gold-red spears of the Crown's Guard. Aegon Targaryen rode at their center, astride a dapple gray, his helm crested by wings of hammered steel. He dismounted before the gate, shook snow from pauldrons, and removed his helm to reveal the face that had captivated half the realm. Striking, austere, almost fragile, as though beauty itself were a wound. Sansa awaited beside the gatehouse arch with Jon and Davos. She welcomed the king with voice clear but warm, speaking of hearth and hospitality. Bran watched from a balcony, noting how Aegon's gaze flicked upward to take stock of walls, arrow loops, distances between towers. Not suspicion. Caution. Within the hall, fires roared. Long tables gleamed with polished oak. Servants carried in platters of trout baked in honey and spice. Wintergreens roasted in garlic, loaves seeded with pine nuts. Laughter rose in cautious gusts. The king's party relaxed, fingers thawing over cups of mulled wine. When Bran rolled forward, the murmuring ebbed. Aegon stepped down from the dais to greet him. They had met once before, years earlier, at Jon's tentative parley beyond the neck. But eyes change with time, the way rivers carve their beds. Aegon's now held shadows. Bran did not remember, a restlessness behind courtesy. "Lord Bran." Aegon inclined his head. "Or do your people still call you the Night Wolf?" "They call me Bran, which is enough titles for any soul." A ghost of a smile. "The world says you saved the North twice, once from ice, once from wave. I've come to ask if the crown might earn its rescue sooner rather than later." "We all share the same tide," Bran said. "Better build one harbor than many flimsy docks." Aegon guided him toward a lesser hearth where privacy flickered amid logs. "I need that harbor," he said softly. "Every port south of the Mander reports water lines rising. Canals overflow. Lowborn talk of the sucking under, though maesters offer natural explanations." "Nature," Bran said, "rarely explains itself with whispers." "Then consider this a plea, not negotiation." Aegon's tone bled earnestness. "If your tree fires shield against water gods, teach us. If your grain silos keep hunger at bay, let us build the same. I'm willing to send half my treasury north for engineers, seeds, whatever price." Bran studied the flames. They burned hot and gold, Yet he saw within them the green glow of the unfed ember buried beneath the god's wood, pulsing like a second sun. "The price is not coin," he said. "It is compassion shared without measure. Will your lords open their stores the way you open your purse? Will the faith militant feed refugees from fisher shacks, not just towns around septs?" "Give me the tool," Aegon said, voice tight. "Let me enforce compassion if I must." "Compassion enforced is obedience, not love," Bran replied. Aegon's jaw clenched. "You sound like my hand. Then perhaps the world whispers truth to more ears than mine." They were silent until Arya cut between conversations to stand beside Bran. Snow had melted on her brow, leaving droplets that caught firelight like tiny opals. She eyed the king coolly. "If you want our secrets, walk the mud with us. See what freezing fog steals from shepherds. Learn names of children gone missing. Secrets errant scrolls handed across desks, their blisters earned." Aegon inclined his head again, but slower. "I accept the challenge." Jon approached. "You'll have riders and guides at dawn. Dress for wet nights." "Very well." Aegon straightened, the courtly mask returning. "May I appoint 2 of my own to accompany us?" "Choose," Jon said. Aegon gestured to a tall woman with scarlet hair tied in a warrior's tail. Lady Miriel Celtigar, rumored to read omens in crab shells, and a slight man in scholar's robes of midnight blue. Maester Ordello, freshly minted from the citadel, yet bearing a gaze older than his years. Arya smiled a thin, knowing smile at Ordello. "Maesters rarely ride marshes. Keep your quills dry." "And now?" Ordello touched 2 fingers to his brow, unfazed. "Knowledge must follow the wound if it wishes to suture the world, my lady." Davos chuckled. "Pray your boots follow too." Preparations began before the feast ended. Maps unfurled. Provisions packed into oilcloth sacks. Bran agreed to remain, weaving avalanches of ravens between camps, while Jon, Arya, and Aegon led 50 riders down the King's Road to the Barrows. They rode through a night painted cobalt by waning moon. Snow melted to slush beneath horses' iron-shod hooves, splashing black on gray. By dawn, fog rolled in, thin at first, then thick as felt, muffling bells on harness and swallowing hoofbeats, so only breath and heart remained. Guides lit pitch-pine torches, but flame wilted, burning green-tinged and feeble. Jon tasted salt on air miles from sea. At midday they reached the shepherd village of Norrin's Cradle. Houses stood intact, doors ajar like parted lips. Sheep milled unguided among half-eaten hay bales, bleating. Cookfires smoldered under cauldrons of porridge congealed to glue. Not a soul to be found. Fog pressed around foundations, tendrils lapping door frames and window sills, until glass glistened like iced over eyes. Aegon dismounted. "Like Old Town," he breathed, "but colder." Jon knelt, scooped earth. Moisture oozed from fist, stank of brine. Seawater this far inland. Arya slipped inside the main hall. Benches overturned. A lute lay on rushes, last chord still humming in wood. She stooped and touched it. Wood shuddered and sang a distant note that felt wrong, like a memory sung off-key. She sheathed her dagger, scanned rafters. A fine dust-coated beams. Gray, not ash. She tasted it, salt and something bitter. Outside, Maester Ordello examined a water trough where fish flapped, though none had been placed there. Translucent, with bones of glass, they thrashed until he lifted one with gloved hands. In sunlight it dissolved to droplets that hissed like boiling oil and vanished. Lady Celtigar spread crab charm bones on a cloak, reading their scatter. "The sea turns inside out," she muttered. "What should lie beneath comes above. What above sinks below. Land forgets to stand." Jon called Bran through the ravens perched on a ruined chimney. Bran's voice tangled with cause. "Fog carries memory of the drowned god's twin, searching for a cradle. Keep the torches high. Fire writes new memory. Fog cannot read burning script." The torches were relit with pine resin. Flames brightened. Fog recoiled but did not flee. They advanced beyond the village, driving scattered sheep before them. Hills rolled gentle, dotted by barrows smooth as sleeping boars. Fog pooled in hollows. As the sun dipped, distant chanting reached them. Soft, syllables that swelled until earth itself seemed to breathe song. Arya's skin crawled. Ghosts' hackles bristled. They followed sound to a stone circle older than kingdoms. There, 60 villagers knelt around a pit where seawater spumed, though no spring existed. They rocked forward, chanting, "Blood remembers salt." Salt remembers womb. Their eyes glowed faint aquamarine. Jon stepped forward. "Norrøn's folk, hear me. Return to your hearths. The sea calls lies." The chant faltered. Heads turned. Recognition flickered, dulled by rapture. A child, barely 6, stood, tears streaking cheeks. "It sings of warmth." "We're cold." Aegon raised a torch. "This flame is warmth." The child gazed blankly. "Flame burns. Sea soothes." She turned back, voice merging with throng. Arya's anger sparked. She unslung the small horn she'd taken from Winterfell's signal stores and blew a single note, sharp, shattering. The fog quivered. Chanting skipped beats. She blew again, longer. The sound knifed air, reverberating off barrows. Fog frayed, curling upward in ragged banners that dissolved. The aquamarine glow faded from villagers' eyes. Dazed, they toppled sideways as though strings were cut. Maester Ordello rushed to the pit edge with instruments. He dipped a rod. Water clung like thick syrup, pulling downward until rod snapped. The pit trembled, receded a hand's breadth. Jon and Aegon herded villagers back toward campfires being hastily built. Arya watched Ordello, suspects stirring. "You expected this." He wiped spectacles fogged by mist. "Not expected. Feared." The Sea of Sighs, an apocryphal Valyrian text, speaks of a calling fog used by priests to lure slaves inland. "I never dreamed we'd meet it here." "Fog doesn't travel," she said, "unless driven." He glanced seaward. "Or freed." That night, under layered blankets by a roaring trench of logs, Aegon spoke softly to Jon. "When I was boy, water gardens in Dorne offered fountains singing secrets. I heard voices there once, promises of kingdoms delivered easily. I told no one. Now I hear same cadence in this fog." He shivered though heat baked his cheeks. "If the sea learns to speak, no iron throne will hold minds loyal." Jon studied embers. "If memory serves love, love steals ears." He passed Aegon a cup of fiery pine needle spirits. "We'll teach folk to remember warmth louder than water's lullaby." "You speak like Bran." "He speaks like us. Only without fear." Aegon smiled ruefully. "Then may courage be epidemic." At Winterfell, Bran felt every chant, every horn note, every heart returning from fog. Through ravens he guided riders to escort villagers home. Infirmaries prepared soups laced with sage and ginger, herbs that grounded memory and body. Children were given small candles to keep beside their beds. Flame comforted dreams. But deeper under roots, a rumble stirred. Resentment of light. The sea child's twin had not drowned. It had shifted, learning to travel by thoughts, clothing itself in memory of warmth to seduce the cold. Fire threatened it, yet longing for solace gave it endless doors into hearts. Bran conversed with the ember sapling. Its leaves shimmered like living rubies. Touching it, he felt network of songs across land, some bright, some dimming. The sapling pulsed advice: restore the choir. Build hearths along every shore. Teach lullabies that burn. He summoned musicians from White Harbor, skalds from Bear Isle, septon chanters from the Neck. They gathered in the great hall, trading melodies. Bran asked them to weave a hymn of home, notes evoking bread crust, father's laugh, first snow on tongue. They labored days until the tune stood like a shelter between chords. Then he sent them out in pairs, gift of candles and songbooks, to every hamlet touched by fog. Meanwhile, Jon's train pushed west, skirting lonely hills to reach the coast near Widow's Watch, where reports claimed entire cliffs sang at dusk. On the third evening they crested a ridge, and saw sea below glowing with veins of emerald. Waves smashed upon rocks, shedding sparks that lingered on air like fireflies. They made camp inland, posted quadruple watch. Near midnight, Arya slipped from tent and climbed a knoll. Ghost paced sentinel. She stared at singing sea. The sound was faint, like wind throughs, yet underneath pulsed a slow heartbeat. A figure joined her, Lady Celtigar. She held crab shells strung on twine. They rattled softly. "The water chants," Celtigar whispered. "But look, no fog, no villagers drawn. Only us hearing." Arya frowned. "It learns who resists, changes path, or seeks bigger prey." Celtigar's eyes shone with eerie calm. "Songs lure what they need." Arya stiffened. "Need for what?" "For a vessel." Celtigar met her gaze. "King Aegon holds lineage of conquerors bound to fire. The sea tries to marry cold and flame. Ice womb, water mind, dragon heart." Arya reached for dagger. "You speak as seer or conspirator." "Neither, only witness." Celtigar turned shells. They formed pattern of ripples. "Beware the union of opposite hungers. It births storms that walk as men." Now, downhill, a gust extinguished several torches around camp. Shadows leaped. Arya sprinted, Ghost racing ahead. She arrived as soldiers scrambled from bedrolls, swords half drawn. From darkness beyond treeline came whispers. No words, just invitation. Jon emerged, voice commanding torches relit. Flames burst, scattering shadows. Light revealed shapes along tree edges. Silhouettes human, yet water sluiced from their bodies though no rain fell. Their eyes glowed faint green. One stepped forward. Skin pale as moon, hair dripping seawater. It was the shepherd boy missing days earlier. He opened mouth. Brine poured instead of words. Aegon strode beside Jon. "Hold!" he cried. The water boy froze. Others halted. Aegon raised his palm, as if feeling heat from his own blood. "I know you're longing," he said quietly. "You want warmth." The shapes leaned, mesmerized. Aegon extended torch. "This is warmth. Take it." He plunged the torch into snow before them. Flame hissed but did not die. The water boy reached, fingers steaming. When skin touched flame, water rolled back like cloth. He convulsed, gasped air, collapsed. The green glow faded, leaving frightened child coughing seawater onto ice. The remaining shapes shrank, water draining into earth, leaving villagers dazed and shivering. Jon helped them toward fires. Arya circled perimeter, blade ready, but no other shapes emerged. Celtigar watched, eyes reflecting flame. Dragon warmth broke the song. She murmured. "Perhaps Targaryen blood is key." Dawn painted sea pink. The rescued spoke of dreams, walking corridors of coral glass, following a voice promising hearths beneath waves. They remembered no more. Maester Ordello recorded testimonies with trembling hand. Jon turned to Aegon. "Your torch saved them." "Why?" Aegon seemed older in morning light. "Dragons breathe fire older than suns," he said. "Maybe their heat carries lullaby of the first heartbeat." He looked toward sea. "If water craves that, it will come for me again." "Then we shield you," Jon said. "Or I become shield for all." Aegon's gaze hardened. "Take me to Bran. Time to forge harbor of compassion you spoke of, using my blood if need be." Then under sea. They rode swift back to Winterfell, escort grown with freed villagers who feared their own beds. Messages raced ahead. Sansa ordered new barracks readied, cauldrons of broth, blankets warmed over stones. Light wagons ferried the elderly. Musicians stood on ramparts playing the home song. Notes drifted across snow, weaving a net of memory. Bran awaited at gate, sapling leaf glowing at his breast. When Aegon dismounted, their eyes met, and Bran saw choice within King's soul, fear forged into sacrifice. Bran wheeled forward. "You would give yourself to quell the fog?" "I would give the fire my ancestors stole," Aegon said. Let the sea burn. Let it learn heat cannot be owned. Arya frowned. We don't trade kings lightly. Nor risk them lightly, Jon added. Bran lifted hand. We trade nothing. We share. The sea child's twin feeds on longing. It offers comfort in exchange for self. We answer with comfort, unbound. Not a king's life, but a king's love. He turned to square, addressing hundreds gathered. Tonight we light the north like summer constant. Every home kindle flame, every voice sing the song of home. We will not command, only invite. The sea may bring its music, we will drown it in louder warmth. Neanawam? Sansa's voice carried. Winterfell opens gates. If fog touches your path, follow lantern wolves to safety. Messengers scattered. By sunset torches, braziers, candles glowed from ramparts to valley farms, points of gold across snowy canvas. Musicians on parapets guided citizens in chorus. The home song swelled. Simple melody, but thousands lifted it until stars seemed to hum along. Bran rolled to the weirwood grove. Jon, Arya, Aegon followed. The ember sapling pulsed, shedding petals of ruby light that dissolved before touching earth. Bran spoke a quiet prayer to roots, asking them to carry song through their veins. He laid his palm on trunk. Trunk shimmered, pulsating to melody. Fog gathered outside walls, unable to breach blaze of flame. It swirled, searching, pressing. Then the song reached it, notes weaving through vapor like threads through cloth. Fog shuddered. Whispers rose, lonely, yearning. The song answered with laughter. Fog thickened, but petals of ruby drifted out over parapet, kissing mist. Where they touched, fog lit from within, glowed warm orange, twisted skyward in spirals, and thinned to morning dew. At the heart of swirl, a shadow formed. Tall, fluid, crowned by coral spires. Eyes like tidal pools regarding torchlit faces. Bran projected calm. You are remembered, he said, voice amplified by tree and flame. Memory is a hearth you may share. You need not consume to exist. The shadow rippled, wave against wind. It reached tendril toward Aegon, sensing dragon blood. Aegon stepped forward, palm up, a small candle flickering in his hand. Take flame, he invited. Hold without devouring. Feel warmth. The tendril touched candle. Flame flared emerald, then steadied to sunset gold. The shadow trembled, then gathered around light, cocooning it. Music softened to hush. In the hush, all heard distant breakers against shore, timeless heartbeat of tide. Then tendril withdrew, carrying candle inward. Shadow expanded, swirling into column that rose beyond walls, twining clouds. It held candle aloft, beacon of gold within sea green. Slowly the column thinned, unraveling into streamers of mist blown high, scattering across sky like distant auroras. Silence fell. Snowflakes drifted again, ordinary, gentle. Torches crackled. People exhaled prayers they did not know they'd held. The fog had gone, not slain but changed. Bran sagged, Jon steadying him. Aegon stared skyward, tears silvering lashes. Is it over? No, Bran said, voice hoarse. Nothing ends, but hunger has learned a new flavor. Will it still come? Arya asked. When lonely, Bran admitted. Ace, we all do. Now we greet it with song, not iron. Then Natranur. Sansa stepped into grove, lantern light feathering her hair. Then we keep singing. Weeks passed. Tides calmed. Wells cleared. Fog returned only as morning mist that fed grass. Bran's sapling bloomed year-round, petals soothing dreams. The north traded sap-infused candles south. King's Landing lit slums with them, calling them dawnlights. People gathered nightly to sing, no longer Bran's composition but new tunes, merging Dornish drums with Riverland strings, free folk throat psalms with reach harmonies. Music became shield and bridge. Aegon lingered. He walked fields with farmers, learning soil. He swapped war stories with free folk over marshmallow-roasted turnips. Eventually he knelt before Hearttree, and asked Sansa to accept northern autonomy in exchange for open borders and shared harvest planning councils. She agreed. A parchment sealed with red wax formalized alliance of shared fires, not sworn swords. One crisp morning, Aegon approached Bran at the ramparts. "I leave tomorrow," he said. "The realm calls, but I carry Winterfell's song." "And Winterfell carries your flame," Bran answered. They clasped wrists. Between their palms small ember petals flickered. Bran felt currents shift, future branching again, less jagged, colored by candle glow. When royal host rode south, villagers lined road, gifting loaves, fur mittens, carved wolf tokens. Aegon smiled more than he had in years. The realm whispered of new age, not of dragons or wolves, but of hearths. Bran watched sunrise gild roofs, scent of baking bread rising. He listened to sapling hum, memories of ocean now gentle as lullaby. He thought of everything still ahead, rains too heavy, hearts broken by grief, songs forgotten. But love remained forge. He breathed crisp air and felt might claws in straw. Fearless. Worlds within worlds. Singing. Same note. Here, now, alive. He wheeled from window, ready to tend the fire once more.